Hey everyone! Welcome to another exciting episode of Nourish Your Soul. Today we're going to be making a really nice savory soup. The ingredients are going to be butternut squash, broccoli, spinach, almond milk, potentially some water depending on the thickness level once we add all the vegetables, and a couple spices that we'll get to later. The tools we're going to be using are our hands, our eyes. We're going to be using a knife, so be careful and get parental supervision if you're under the age of 18. A blender. And we're also going to be using a stovetop, an oven, and a pot. The butternut squash takes a long time to cook. We're going to cook it in the oven. Before you cook it, you need to cut it in half. And I'm just going to jump right in.
You're going to have your oven preheated to 400 degrees.
Let me know if you end up making this for yourself or for your family. So what we're going to do, being really careful, is moving everything else out of the way. To cut a butternut squash, and by the way, you can eat the skin of a butternut squash, but you have to, well, it's recommended that you cut out the seeds that are on the inside, but if you wash off the seeds and let them dry, they can be a yummy snack for days. So what we're going to do, being really careful with our knife and our cutting board, we're going to cut off the top part of the butternut squash where the stem is. A serrated knife would be the best kind of knife to use. Okay, and trust me, it's not the easiest thing in the world to cut a squash. So you want to be really, really careful. Make sure your hands are dry so you have a good grip on your knife. And like I said, if you're under 18, get parental supervision or get a parent or trusted guardian to help you with this recipe. Since this one is really, really long, I'm going to cut it in half like this first, and then I'm going to cut both of those halves in half like this. I really put my body weight into that. So we're going to end up with 4 sections of squash. This bottom section is going to have seeds in it. We're going to cut this in half and I'll show you the seeds. I'm just going to actually take a spoon. I just remembered that I'm going to need a spoon to take these seeds out of there. You could use your hands, but I don't feel like getting my hands that messy right now. Alright, I got the spoon I'm going to use. If you've ever carved pumpkins, it's like I'm carving out the inside of this squash. Alright, so that one's all carved out. Gonna do the next one. You could rinse off all of this stuff and you could save this as a puree and put it into a different recipe, and you can also save the little seeds. Not only could you plant them in a garden and get a whole nother butternut squash, but you can also eat the seeds as well. And I just remembered to mention that there's also a little knob that we're going to cut off as well. So when you're cutting these pieces of the squash, you want to make them about the same size as possible because they're going to go in the oven, and when they're in the oven, you want them to cook evenly. So that some parts are cooked more than other parts. You just want to have it all be nice and even. So you want to make the sizes as close to the same size as possible. Okay, I'm going to cut this side in half now. Alright, isn't this such a pretty orange color? So we're going to take this pan. I recommend using glass or metal to use in your oven. And we're going to put each quarter or half, depending on how big your butternut squash is, into the pan. And we're going to cook it just like this. We're going to cook it for 40 minutes. These are really thick squashes and they tend to take about 40 minutes to cook in an oven at 400 degrees. When these have been in for about 30 minutes, I'm going to throw the broccoli in on top of them so that the broccoli can cook for a little bit too. Alright, so let's put these in the oven. Being really careful. These are going to be in there for about 40 minutes. I'm going to set a timer on the oven for 30 minutes right now because when that timer goes off, I'm going to put the broccoli in on top of the squash and let the broccoli cook. So I'm just going to set a timer for 30 minutes right now. Now that the squash is in the oven, I'm going to clean up these insides of the squash. I'm going to separate the mushy parts from the seeds. We're going to put the seeds in a bowl and just rinse those off. And I'm actually going to save the mushy parts and put it into the soup. What we're going to do is we're going to put the butternut squash and with its mushy parts and all the other vegetables into the blender. And the reason that I have most of the butternut squash in the oven right now is because cooking it really brings out more flavor and it makes it more soft, which is just going to be easier in the blender. But for now, these ends can go in the compost. And I'm just going to start separating the seeds from the mushy parts. And I think when I'm done doing that, because it's probably not going to take 30 to 40 minutes to do that separation, I think I'm going to get a head start on some of the dishes that I have piled up. Okay, so I did all my dishes. I separated the goop from the seeds, and that is the timer. I just put the broccoli in the oven. The timer was going off, the 30 minutes was up. The squash has been in there now for 30 minutes, and I put the broccoli in there on top of the squash. And we set the timer for another 10 minutes. So the broccoli and the squash will be in there together for 10 minutes, getting nice and cooked, and then we're going to put everything into the blender. In the nice time, I'll fill you guys in about these seeds. I separated the seeds from the mushy part of the squash, and so now we're left with the seeds of the squash. Just to give you a quick visual there. So I haven't rinsed them yet. But we can rinse them, and even without rinsing them, we can eat them. They're a really, really nutritious snack. We could put these on a baking sheet and bake them for about 10 to 15 minutes with whatever kind of spices you like. And then you would have a baked snack. But these will also last on the counter or in the fridge for about 3 or 4 days without cooking, from my experience. And not only are they a really good snack, but you could also plant these in some soil and you would have some more squash. And like I said, this mushiness is going to go into the blender with everything else. While the broccoli and squash is in the oven, I'm going to start preparing the spinach for the soup. What we're going to do is put it in the blender with some almond milk, and we're going to blend it up, and that's going to go in the soup. That itself could be its own soup, but we're going to mix it with these other veggies. So we're just going to put the broccoli, or the spinach, into there. I got this spinach from a local supermarket. I haven't started growing my own spinach yet, but I'm going to soon. And I just want to say a little prayer of gratitude for the spinach and all the vegetables we're working with today. Thank you, Great Spirit and Creator, for giving us this beautiful nourishment for our bodies. So now that the spinach is in there, I'm going to add in the almond milk. And I have a feeling I'm going to have to use water in the recipe, and that's totally okay. I don't have a lot of almond milk right now. And sorry to say, I'm eyeballing everything in this recipe. I know there's probably going to be about 15 people at this party, and I know a couple other people are making food too. I like to eyeball pretty much everything that I make, and I couldn't say exact measurements at all. I just kind of try to follow my intuition, follow my gut, go with what I feel is right, what I think is right, and if I make any mistakes, I just learn from them. So now that that's in there, I'm going to put the lid on it. Use care and caution when using electricity. Going to plug it in, and we're going to blend that until it gets all liquidy, until you really can't see any more leaves and the leaves are all super chopped up and it's just like a green liquid. I'm using the liquefy setting on my blender. Alright, that just took a few seconds, and we have a nice blended up spinach liquid with the almond milk. The almond milk offers a little bit of protein and a little bit of healthy fat, as well as a couple other things. There's fiber in there. There's a little bit of protein. There's some vitamin D, some iron, lots of vitamin E. So I have a pot waiting on the stove that we're going to end up putting all the liquefied vegetables in. I'm just going to grab that and go ahead and put my liquefied almond milk and spinach into that pot. You know what? While I'm thinking about it, might as well just blend up this mushy squash parts while we're at it. That broccoli and squash is still going to be in there for a few more minutes. So we can blend this up in there too. Nice. I'm getting so excited. This is coming along so nicely. And at the end, this is all going to be, my guess is a really, really deep green color. Man, this is just getting me so excited. I know that there are people out there that are still getting used to vegetables and want to take their time easing into them, but I just love vegetables so much. I'm so grateful for all the vitamins and minerals that they offer our body. They might make us so strong and healthy. And whenever you blend up spinach in ingredients, as an ingredient in recipes, you really don't taste it that much. That's why I like adding it, and that's why I'm adding it to this soup. Because when you blend it in with other ingredients, you really don't taste the spinach, but it is in there and you are getting the nutritional benefit from it. The broccoli and squash are almost done, so I'm just going to clear the space right here so that I can put the hot pan onto this glass piece instead of putting it where it could melt on the regular countertop. So I'm just going to clear the space of this glass. We can put that back up there for now.
And there it goes.
So, I'm using a pot holder. An oven mitt or a pot holder are fantastic options because definitely can't grab this with your hand or you'd get a burn. So I'm being really careful to grab this out of here. Definitely want to use something warm, proof, to get it out. And I'm going to stick this right over here on the counter. Okay, I'm going to turn my oven off. Okay, so doesn't this just look so nice? I'm going to be mixing this all together into a big pot that's already on the stove, and I'm just going to grab that and bring that over here real quick. Alright, so be careful because this pan is really hot right now. It was just in the oven for a long time on really high heat. Be careful. So I have my pot that I'm going to be cooking in, and to begin with, in this process, I already have this liquefied squash pieces and spinach, and I'm just going to put it in there. Alrighty, it's a nice green. And next, we're going to be blending up the broccoli and the squash. I don't think it's going to all fit in my blender at the same time, so we're going to have to do it in sections. And I'm just going to put the water in there to begin with because it's going to cool down the heat of those vegetables. I know I'm going to be feeding like 10 to 15 people like I said, so I'm actually going to use like a lot of liquid so that the soup kind of goes longer, you know what I mean? Feeds more mouths. Gonna put that in there. This is gonna be so fun to blend. Let's go for it. Let's just start with this broccoli. We are diving in, folks. Okay, so doing this is making me remember that it's actually way helpful to make your vegetables smaller, to put them into smaller pieces by cutting them or tearing them before you put them in the blender. I'm kind of just remembering that because this broccoli just doesn't want to really break up very well right now. So it did blend a little bit, but what I'm going to do, now it's cooled down because it was in that water, I'm just going to break the florets off, and I would probably let all this cool down and then do this before you even put it in the blender. But I'm just ripping it up. My hands are clean, folks. I'm going to rip this stem apart. Alright, so now that's tinier pieces. That'll probably be more manageable for the blender. Okay? And I'm going to put this piece in there too. It's kind of cooled down enough, so I'm just going to rip it up and put it in there. Make sure it's cooled down enough before you really dig into this. So the broccoli's all broken up and in there, and I added a little bit more water so that there's more good liquid and solid ratio, and I'm going to liquefy the rest of that. Alright, so just checking on this. There might be some broccoli chunks in here, and that's okay. Alright, so this is a bunch of pretty liquefied broccoli. You can see all. So I'm going to go ahead and dump it in there with the spinach and the other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and dump it in here too. Alright, so it's a little bit chunky. That's okay. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to make these squash pieces a little bit smaller. So being careful, this isn't very hot anymore. I'm just going to slide it a little bit out of the way. And I'm going to make these pieces smaller so that we can blend them easier. I'm going to quarter them, cut them into 4 pieces. They're nice and soft. If you were to eat these as is right now, they would be so tasty. Alrighty, and I'm going to go for some more almond milk. This is actually the rest of the almond milk I have. So we're going to have to use water for the rest of the recipe. I think I'm going to have to get even more water. And a real quick side note, we are here on location in an inner city area, and the water isn't very clean. So what we use is a pure water filtration system The initial system just hooks up to your faucet head, and you turn on the pure system when you want to get drinking water or cooking water. It runs about $40. It's a little bit cheaper. I know it's a little bit cheaper than $40 at Home Depot. It's like $35 or something at Home Depot. And I think it's a great investment to clean your water. It gets chlorine and heavy metals out of your water. So it's about $35 at Home Depot for the first initial system, and then it's about the same price for more filtration cartridges, and you get 3 in a pack for about $35. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about clean water and filtering your water, and a quick tip about that. Alright, so I'm back with my water, got it filled up, and I'm going to add more water into here so that the squash can liquefy better. This soup is going to be so tasty. So the amount of liquid you add and the length of time blending it is all going to change the thickness of your soup. So I say just experiment, have fun with it, see what you can come up with, and see what you're going to like. Okay, it's a really great part of that. We're going to put it on in. The pot's about halfway full now. Next I'm going to add in some spices. Okay, so I'm adding turmeric. I'm also going to add some cumin and some dill. I'm not going to add a lot of dill because that flavor can definitely get overpowering, and I don't want to do that with the dill. But I'm also going to add black pepper and cilantro. And when I put spices into meals, I'm usually experimenting. Sometimes I know exactly what things taste like, and I know that I do or don't want a certain flavor. And I actually did that with this one. I was thinking about putting in rosemary, but I thought it wouldn't really taste that good with the dill. At least just that's my opinion. So I'm not going to add rosemary, but I'm going to add a little bit of dill. So I'm just going to start with the black pepper here. Probably going to put in a lot of black pepper. Just eyeballing everything. Cumin is a traditional flavor in American tacos. So if you think of what tacos taste like, that's pretty much what cumin tastes like. Turmeric, really good anti-inflammatory substance. It's really good to drink in the morning or at night before you go to bed. I'm going to let people put their own salt in if they want salt. Alright, I'm just going to do a little bit of dill. That was definitely more than I wanted to add, but hopefully it's okay. Alright, and I got this cilantro from a local food pantry. I'm going to use it. Cilantro is a really easy herb to grow yourself, and I'm going to be growing it pretty soon. Smells good. I'm so excited to share this with my friends. I'm going to mix all that up. Alright, so it's nice and mixed, and I'm going to put it on the stove just to simmer for a little bit. I'm going to put it on pretty low heat, but I'm just going to put it like a quarter of the way to totally high. Like halfway to halfway. And I'm going to cover it, and I'm just going to let that simmer for about 20 minutes. I'm actually going to go get ready to head out to the party, and I'll show you guys some videos of my friends trying it at the party.
Alright, so here's the soup. We're at the party. We got the rice. How is it?
This is good. It gets a AAA plus.
It has a very unique flavor. It's a little bit sweet, a little bit savory. I think it's the combination of the butternut squash and the broccoli. It reminds me a little bit of the broccoli cheddar soup at Panera.
It's like totally immune boosting. It just tastes like health in a bowl.